African, and some the Arawak Indian, and we get Jamaican. That's how we talk, me brother Jamaican. That's how when we talk, sister Jamaican. Talk how you talk, me brother Jamaican. Yeah, man. Everywhere me go, people want to learn Jamaican. They love the sound, they love the vibration, they love the grammar, the word combination. Spoken in Jamaica by the whole of the nation. Some people say you have to talk the English. They think Jamaican is a lower language. We talk the English when we want, but to listen to this. Out of the English and Jamaican we sound the sweetest. Look at that. Who there? What for? You are. Go away. Where? Look here. Who ya? Here. That's up. Here. That's up. Where are you going? How we are going? Come over here. Come here now. I see. Oh, what do you eat? Yeah. How I am. So me done. Leave me alone. Me now. Go on. Galang. Pinky, lava, lava. So, bobo, yaga, yaga, jaga, jaga, re, wagga, wagga. Yeah, forget the influence of Rasta. Hear the Ital and the Irie and the Iten Ara. You have your language, you can't chat how you are. Nobody can tell you say you can't. Jamaican, that's the way you talk, you bring a Jamaican. That's the way you talk, sister Jamaican. Talk how you talk, you bring a Jamaican. Talk how you talk, sister Jamaican. That's the way you talk, you bring a Jamaican. That's the way you talk, sister Jamaican. Talk how you talk, you bring a Jamaican. Talk how you talk, Maccabee, celebrating the Jamaican language. And we're celebrating all that's great about Jamaica all of this week here on the Pat Montague Show. I want to thank you for joining us today for music, information, and so much more. We're going to share snippets of Jamaican history. You know, I'm a history buff. I'm sorry. I just love it, love it, love it. So I am going to be sharing snippets of Jamaican history with you throughout this program so you can know where we're coming from. Because once you know where we're coming from, we know where we are right now and where we are going. So I've been doing it all afternoon throughout my program. For those of you who are just joining us live on our various social media platforms, let me take you to the year 1693. That was the year after the destruction of Port Royal. In that year, the city of Kingston was laid out. The ground on which it now stands was then covered with trees and grass pieces and was a large private property. It was marked off into streets and lanes, and buildings began to be erected. Kingston soon became an important town. And there's such a wealth of information, I can share it all with you. So we're just gonna cherry pick certain years. Bosie 498, welcome. Cammy is in the house again. Jasmina, Doreen Spence, I hope you'll enjoy this information that we share connected to Jamaica. Before independence, just told you about the formation of Kingston, the city. Let's go to 1728 when Major General Hunter arrived in Jamaica as governor. During his time, the Maroons were very, very troublesome. Two regiments of soldiers had to be brought from Gibraltar to protect the Jamaican planters and their estates against them. They were commanded by Maroon Chief Cudjo, and as they knew the country perfectly, they always managed to escape when pursued. Bloodhounds were imported to hunt them down, but it was not until 1734 that any kind of victory was won over the Maroons. In that year, a body of soldiers attacked a Maroon village called Nannytown and destroyed it. A good many of the Maroons were killed. Many Maroons themselves threw
themselves down the precipice which their town overlooked rather than become prisoners. But the Maroons were not crushed. They rallied again, and when another expedition of 200 sailors and 400 militiamen were sent against their new town, they surrounded those forces and attacked them. The Maroons were hidden among the rocks and trees and thus couldn't be seen. 20 of the Englishmen were killed and many wounded before the troops managed to escape. Celebrating Jamaica's history before independence today here on the program. We are so happy that you got a chance to check in with us here on the program. And I'll point out to you that the year after that 1728 incursion by the Maroons was the year that my high school was founded, Woolmer's, with a bequest from John Woolmer, 1729. Happy Independence to all the Jamaicans checking us out today. Thursday is the big day, and we're going to have on this program Jamaican history after independence. But today we're looking at some of the highlights and lowlights before independence actually happened. In 1738 in Jamaica, Edward Trelawney became the governor. He governed the island for nearly 14 years and was one of the ablest Jamaican administrators. On his arrival, he tried to put the Maroon War to an end. A determined effort was still being made to subdue these people. Mosquito Indians from Nicaragua were employed to hunt them down along with the Jamaican militia. But a colonist, Guthrie by name, conceived the plan to make the Maroons the friends of the government. His idea was acted upon by Governor Trelawney, and a treaty of peace and friendship was drawn up between the Maroons and the government. They were allowed to govern themselves. They were given land in different parts of the country free of taxes. They were to be tried and punished by their own chief, but no chief could pass the sentence of death on any of them. They were to capture all runaway slaves and take them back to their owners. They were also supposed to assist in suppressing any rebellion among the slaves. Jamaican history on display today here on the Pat Montague Show. In 1760, a formidable insurrection of the slaves took place in St. Mary under a leader called Tacky. They seized the town of Port Maria, armed themselves, murdered all the white people that fell into their hands, and were preparing for further outrages when they were met by the troops sent against them. They fought desperately, but in the end, they were defeated. 400 were killed in battle, and 600 were deported to British Honduras. The Ringleaders were put to death. In 1793, a detachment of British troops and black soldiers went from Jamaica to Haiti. Some important Haitian cities were taken, but the troops died rapidly from the disease. Trouble arose between the government and the Maroons of Trelawney, who complained that they were not being properly treated. Two Maroons had been flogged in a Montague Bay workhouse instead of being handed over to the Maroons to be dealt with as they ought to have been. They also asked for more land as their numbers had increased. Then the governor did nothing to make peace. He preferred to fight the Maroons, and so a new Maroon War broke out. About 5,000 troops were employed against the Maroons, and bloodhounds were imported from Cuba to hunt them down. A reward of £10 was offered for every Maroon captured. For some months, the struggle continued without any clear victory. At last, the Maroons surrendered, having been promised that they would be allowed to remain in the island. This promise was broken. They were shipped away to Nova Scotia in Canada, and from that country, they were later sent to Sierra Leone in Africa. Since the Maroons in other parts of the island had not been involved in the war, they were left undisturbed. They continued to enjoy the rights and privileges they had won under Governor Edward Trelawney. Jamaican history on display this afternoon here on the Pat Montague Show. Certainly hope that you're enjoying the information we are sharing. Jamaica's history. Brought to you here on the Pat Montague Show, compliments of Prigs and Automotive Group celebrating Jamaica's independence, honoring the sacrifice, contributions, and creativity of Jamaicans, and saluting icons and trailblazers, acknowledging the many outstanding moments and accomplishments in science, the arts, culture, entertainment, innovation, and nation building. We're looking at Jamaica's history before independence, and we're at 1807 as we count up to 1962. The slave trade between Africa and Jamaica was abolished in 1807 by the British Parliament. It was decreed that after March 1st of 1808, no more slaves should be brought to the island. The first part of the fight against slavery had been won by the abolitionists. It's estimated that from the time when Jamaica passed into the hands of the English until the abolition of the slave trade, over 1 million human beings were imported from Africa. When the trade was abolished, there were 319,351 slaves in on the island of Jamaica. In 1816, the law which was enacted that for giving a slave his liberty, the owner should pay £100 to the government was rescinded. This law had been passed to prevent its owners from liberating too many of their slaves. Jamaican history today here on the Pat Montague Show, just sharing some of the high points and low points in our history. Simon Bolivar, the liberator of Spanish Central America, came to Jamaica in 1815 as a political refugee and remained for about 7 months. The Duke of Manchester entertained him, and this was, for those of you who know history a little bit, the same year as that famous Battle of Waterloo. Samuel Sharp was hanged on May 23rd, 1832, and was buried in the sands of Montego Bay Harbor, from which his remains were later recovered and interred beneath the pulpit of the Burchell Baptist Church. The missionaries working among the slaves were accused of having been the indirect cause of this insurrection, and some of them were very, very harshly treated. Jamaican history today, compliments of our friends at Craig's in Automotive Group. Let's go to the year 1833. In May, the English colonial secretary stated in the House of Commons that all appeals to the slaveholders had been made in vain, and that the British nation must now, on its own initiative, suppress slavery in all the British dominions. The Abolition Act was passed on August 28th. It said that all children under 6 years of age should be set free. There was to be a 6 year period of apprenticeship from 1834 to 1840, after which every slave in the British Empire should receive full freedom. The British Parliament voted £20 million as compensation to the slaveholders. Of this amount, 5,853 and 975 was to go to the Jamaican slaveholders. In 1834, the Marquis of Sligo arrived as governor. The apprenticeship system began under him. On the 1st of August 1834, all chapels and churches in the island, except one or two churches in Kingston, were open for divine service. These places of worship were attended by thousands of people. On the following Monday, the apprentices turned out to work, except in the parish of St. Anne. In 2 or 3 other parishes, some minor disturbances occurred later on. On the whole, it was soon found that the apprenticeship system was not working well. The planters, angry that they had been defeated in their struggle to maintain slavery, inflicted numerous punishments on the apprentices. Consequently, it was determined by the British Parliament in 1838 that the period of apprenticeship should cease on August 1st, 1838. On August 1st, there were demonstrations throughout the island to celebrate the first day of complete freedom. In Spanish Town, the capital, a hearse containing the chains and shackles that were sometimes put on rebellious slaves were driven through the streets, and these symbols of slavery were solemnly buried. There were bonfires and feasting everywhere. Queen Victoria, who had just ascended the throne, was blessed as the author of the people's freedom. But the troubles that had begun during the time of apprenticeship now became much worse. Many of the free people did not wish to work for the men who had once owned them. There were complaints about the small wage that the planters offered, 9 pence a day in a great many instances. The planters, on the other hand, were stern and angry. They began to turn the people off their land. Oh, and by the way, support for the Pat Montague show here on INI Radio is brought to you by Juicy Patties, now open on Bird Road at 9842 Southwest 40th Street, conveniently located right between the 826 and the Florida Turnpike. The perfect stop on your way to or from the airport and just minutes from FIU. They have Jamaican patties, and you can stop by to win a gift card from them as well. Juicy Patties, Bird Road, 9842 Southwest 40th Street, minutes from FIU, right between the 826 and the Turnpike. We're also happy to have the support of stylist training, researching, and networking with dermatologists. And they want to let the community know about an event that they're planning for education, connection, and community. They're going to be offering free styling sessions and free consultations at their Fort Lauderdale pop-up salon on August 30th from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's for anyone experiencing scalp or hair concerns and the stylists who care for them. If you have any questions or would like any more information about this Fort Lauderdale pop-up salon organized by Stylist Training, Researching, and Networking with Dermatologists Strand, go to the strandnetwork.org. That's the strandnetwork.org. We'd like to also say thank you for their support of the program from the Dutch Pot Jamaican restaurant out of Jamaica, One Pot, and they're celebrating Jamaica's independence on August 6th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Everyone who stops in gets a chance to buy a large oxtail meal and get a free mini meal from Dutch Pot to celebrate Jamaica's independence. And they have locations all over South Florida. It's the Pat Montague Show. It is INI Radio on this Tuesday afternoon, the Tuesday before Jamaica's independence, coming up in 2 days. And we are going to be with you here on the program on Thursday as well. So we hope that you will join us because we're counting down to counting up to independence now. Then on Thursday, we start counting from independence to now. So we hope you will join us here on the program for that. Let us see which year that we got to. The first year that postage stamps were issued in Jamaica was 1858. A year after that, the telegraph system was introduced into the colony, and there were 2 local riots during that year. In 1861, a great religious revival occurred in Jamaica, which soon degenerated, as they say, into suspicious or superstitious practices. It's the Jamaica Independence special on the Pat Montague Show, sharing a little bit about the history and developments in Jamaica before independence. Want to thank everybody checking in on our various platforms today, digging deep in our history as we get Jamaica's independence. 64 years on Thursday. We're counting or marking significant developments in Jamaica up to that point. For his recall. Under his administration, taxes were increased, and he himself, early in 1865, described the colony as in a state of degeneration. In 1865, the Reverend Dr. Underhill, a Baptist minister in England, sent to the Secretary of State for the colonies a letter on the condition of Jamaica. Dr. Underhill had been in Jamaica and knew the country well. In his letter, he complained of the treatment which the lower classes received at the hands of the planters and urged that certain reforms should be instituted. His letter was sent to General Eyre for the latter's comments. Eyre circulated the letter among the clergymen and custodes of Jamaica, and nearly all of these denied the assertions of Dr. Underhill. A copy of the letter found its way into the newspaper. Public meetings called Underhill meetings were held in different towns, and many of these were presided over by Mr. George William Gordon, who was a member of the House of Assembly. He had once been a justice of the peace but had been deprived of his commission by Eyre, who showed an aversion to him because he had exposed certain abuses in the parish of St. Thomas in the East, and in particular, the conduct of the Anglican rector. Eyre was a strong Anglican, and Gordon had become a Baptist. Gordon made fiery speeches inside and outside the House of Assembly. From 1864, he represented St. Thomas in the East. He had in St. Thomas a political supporter and religious follower called Paul Bogle, who exercised considerable local influence. On October 11, in Morant Bay, Paul Bogle and his followers marched into the town and demonstrated in front of the courthouse. The volunteer militia, which had been called out by the Custos, fired on the crowd, and Bogle rushed the volunteers and besieged the vestry in the courthouse. His men set fire to the building, and the Custos and a number of others were killed while trying to escape. Paul Bogle was for a short time master of the parish. But Eyre sent a warship to Morant Bay and poured troops and Maroons into St. Thomas. The resistance was ineffective. Over 1,000 huts were burnt, nearly 600 people were shot. England, the total amount being over £250,000. The Imperial government lent Jamaica $800,000 to assist in the rebuilding of Kingston. Owing to the prompt assistance which the colony received from the mother country, there was no starvation. As quickly as possible, normal conditions were restored. An assistance committee, at the head of which at first was Dr. Natal, Archbishop of the West Indies, did great service in Spanabana, Mother Earth, as we look back at 1907 when that earthquake destroyed Kingston. Certainly hope you've enjoyed the information that we shared with you this afternoon. And like I mentioned, we're going to be doing the same thing come Thursday, but this time we're going to be looking at Jamaica after independence with our music, our cultural history, and so much more. It's been a great pleasure being here with you on the program. Just have a few more minutes to hang with you today. So, what we're going to do is just share some Jamaican independent style music to take us up to wrap up time. This one is from the Tenors. Okay, I have too many songs by the tenors. That's not really the one that I was planning to play today. Not about the bashful girl, although that's a great song too. The one I actually wanted to play was this one. Come celebrate. That's more independence and festival like, right? Iselin Walters. By the way, today, birthday of some great friends of mine, Kevin Hines, Terry Salmon, Fire of the Taylor Hall, University of the West Indies, Mr. Leighton McKnight, happy birthday to you. Sophia Seaveright, Chantel Bullock, Iris Salmon, Ione Pitta, one of our regular favorite listeners here on the program, and we say happy birthday going out to the maestro himself, Mr. Dean Ivanhoe Fraser. Hope you're having a wonderful birthday, Mr. Fraser. We did a tribute to him earlier on in the show. Right now, though, we're going to leave you with this year's winning festival song from the Burns. It's called I Love Jamaica. Hasta la bye bye, everybody.